Before we start the podcast, I wanted to tell you about another podcast I've been listening to, Unconcluded. Take a listen.
Orlando police detectives say their strongest piece of evidence is this surveillance image of a person of interest, as well as Jennifer's car, which was found at a condo complex about a mile from where she lived.
On January 24th, 2006, 24-year-old Jennifer Kesse was reported missing when she failed to show up for work. The only lead in the case? A mysterious person of interest captured on video leaving her car. To this day, that person and Jennifer's whereabouts are still unknown. Unconcluded is a real-time investigative podcast taking another look. You can subscribe or listen on Apple Podcasts or your favorite app.
So we're still waiting for that one person to come through with the one bit of information that could bring Jennifer home.
Let's help host Sean Gerd bring Jennifer home. After listening to Gone at 21, do yourself a favor, go over and listen to Unconcluded. Before going into the interview with John Carter, I contacted Christopher. I told him who I was and why I was calling. I told him I wanted to ask him a couple questions about people he went to high school with. And of course, I was going to throw in a couple investigative questions to him as well. There was a long pause, and Christopher said he wanted to help, but he wanted to check his schedule and call me back. Christopher called me back about 15 minutes later. He said that he really couldn't help because he hadn't spoken to these people or communicated with them since high school. I told him that I knew he had and I wanted to talk to him about it. He said, who? I started naming off people that came in contact with Christopher after high school and after Katelyn's death. I also knew he messaged Katelyn, but I didn't mention that just yet. While I was in mid-sentence, Christopher hung up on me. I called him back, but he didn't answer. So I called Detective Vance Patton and told him what happened. Detective Patton called Christopher, and Christopher said he thought I was rude. He said he would talk to Detective Patton, but he didn't want to speak to me. Wow, I thought I was pretty nice. Rude? I can be rude sometimes, and I can be direct just about all the time, but I was pretty nice. Even Lisa agreed with me, and trust me, Lisa has told me when I was rude, and Lisa would have told me then as well. That's for sure. I spoke to John and Karen about Christopher, but they referred to him by his middle and last name, which is what he goes by. I blocked that name out, so you're going to hear that break in their sentences in this next clip. Just add Christopher to that break. We left off last week with the last interview from John Carter and his mom, Karen. That's where we'll pick up on this episode. Again, a lot of this interview is being withheld until the breakdown portion of the podcast. You told somebody to not mention because you had already told the police.
Neth.
Yeah.
Neth?
Yeah.
Neth.
I don't know that.
Just one of Katelyn's friend from
I didn't know what you were
Tech.
saying.
Yeah.
I didn't. That sound like a word.
So, what I want to know is, what was your thinking in telling him not to say anything?
I mean, it wasn't that I might have said something along those lines, but really it was, there's no need.
Okay.
And actually, from what I remember, if I can remember any of it, was that he told me, have you mentioned? I said yes, and that was pretty much it. Like, I don't remember saying, no, don't talk about, I don't see the point.
Yeah. You said, don't mention, or they already know about him.
or something like that.
Yeah, I
kind of thought that was strange, because I'd be like,
Well, and I'll be honest with you.
But I've already mentioned him, and first of all, second of all the evidence against existed on Facebook, existed in all the creepy text messages he sent to many different people, and even people I met after the fact.
Do you have any that you sent to Katelyn?
Yeah, of course not.
Okay.
Just real quickly on the thing, I even stopped the police with it too, and was talking to them saying, I don't know, I just heard the name mentioned, and I felt I was being told, drop that. We're not, we've already, he's
And
not.
maybe what I told.
Already that night is when I was being told, okay, kind of a thing from the police. So my feeling would have been to say, if you said to me, what about this thing? I would have said, the police already know about it, and there's no need to really talk about it with them. They kind of were cutting me off.
Yeah. You talked to a girl. I have no clue what her name is now. Allie. And I guess she's part Korean or something.
Oh.
And Neth and her were friends, or friends with her brother. And you said, this is John, Katelyn's boyfriend. She's missing. And then you said, Neth told me to say that you had something about he tried to ask.
I had my own private investigator, so when she was around, I did try and do my own personal digging.
Okay. Did Katelyn ever tell you about asking her out?
No.
Okay.
No, but she also said, like, she would say things like saying really creepy stuff to me, or he'd say creepy stuff to me on the bus, but I trusted Katelyn.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I had to know everything about what was going on. And honestly, there are things that have come up after all of this that I've heard about that I didn't know.
Well, I can tell you right now that Katie told me she didn't remember her name. I sent her the mugshot of him. She goes, yes, I know who he is. He asked Katelyn out like 2 weeks prior to her going missing. She said no. He got very upset and told Katelyn that he loved her. Okay?
What the fuck?
Yes. And I said, Katie, you think he would have told John about this? Or she would have told John about this? And she goes, I don't know. I'm sure she would. But maybe she didn't, because she didn't
think it was necessary.
Yeah.
Honestly, and I wouldn't blame her. It wasn't that I would get pissed off or that she would be worried.
Yeah.
It's just why make John freak out about something that clearly it's and I don't mean to sound like a dick, but
let me
of course not
read you and I think this is important for you to know.
Okay,
because I tried to talk to him yesterday and just said, hey, I want to ask you about some people at Butler Tech. I don't really know Katelyn's friends at Butler Tech. I said, I understand, but just, I'll only take a few minutes, try to get him in and then ask him about this. And he said, well, let me look at my schedule. 15 minutes later, he called back. He didn't want to come in. He said, why do I have to come in? And I said, look, this is why, I want to talk to you about these people. And I started naming off people that she went to school at Butler Tech. He was up on me. I called Vance. I call him back first. No response. Text him, no response. Call Vance and say, hey, Vance, this guy just hung up on me, and he was really, really nervous. He did not want to come in. And he said, I said, can you call him? He goes, yeah, I'll give him a call. So Vance calls him, and the guy said, I was rude. Okay. I looked and I said, was I rude? She's like, no, I'll tell you when you're rude.
You're just explaining yourself.
Yeah, I was just explaining myself. And I said, Vance, can you call him? Well, he called him. He told Vance that his dad was a public defender and that he didn't like me. He wouldn't answer my calls because I was rude. And he said he would talk to Vance, so I shipped Vance some stuff that I want to know. And then after that, will you take a polygraph? And so, okay, let me read you some of these. Okay, so I sent her this, and she writes, yes, I do remember him. I didn't know him well. That made me remember a couple weeks before she went missing, She told me that he asked her out on a date and was upset when she told him no because she was engaged, and he still tried to pursue her. I wrote, "Thank you. Was she afraid of him? How upset was she?" How upset was she? And she wrote, "She was uneasy about it, definitely." And she said he took it pretty hard because he said he loved her. I forgot about all this. So that's, and you know, sometimes something happens, you're like, oh, what a creep, and then you forget.
The first person, and it was Neth who brought him up. Mm-hmm. When because I was in such a panic, I wasn't sitting here pointing fingers. I didn't know what was going on. Mm-hmm. I had no idea. And I don't remember when Neth called me, but Neth was like, what about... And I went, I'm going to tell the police about him. And I made it a point to tell him. Mm-hmm. I don't remember saying, Neth, don't worry about it. Mm-hmm. But I could have. I could have been like, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. Okay. She's my girlfriend. I'm taking care of her.
Right.
Okay? And I had a degree of jealousy towards Neth because they were pretty close. Same with Brad. Mm. I had degrees of jealousy towards any guy that showed her a lot of attention. But it was never something that I always trusted her. I always knew that she would come home to me.
Right.
You know, and I knew that if she had an issue with me, she would tell me up front. She wouldn't make it a secret. She wouldn't try and go behind my back. Okay. But I wanted to be the protector. Right. I wanted to save her.
Right.
And I think that maybe that's why I said, don't worry about it, I'll take care of it. But either way, I was taking care of it. Yeah. I was saying that, and I knew that creepy to her. I knew creepy to her when she went to school with him. I knew continued to talk to her after they were out of school. Mm-hmm. I didn't know to the extent of what he was doing. I didn't know he said he loved her.
Let me tell you something very interesting. On 8/8 of 2011, Neth warned another girl about him. And I got that information. Look, stay away from him. He's crazy. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 5 to 6 days later, she's gone. And then...
That girl is gone?
No, Caitlin. Oh. And then that with the sexual issues he's had online, okay? And then I told me during graduation, he was so mad he couldn't stand where he wanted to stand. He started hitting with his fist wall. There's anger issues there too. Mm-hmm. This combined with what I just told you,
that's feasible. That's something that I would look into if I were you.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. John and I we haven't talked a lot about it. Mm-hmm. But again, and I told you this on the phone before, is that was a conversation that I would have with Becky, and I would bring it up and I would say, Becky, I'm telling you, I believe it's someone like that. You're telling me it's not, but what I believe with my whole heart is it's someone who wanted her, and she said, no, I'm with John. I just have always believed that.
I've already mentioned this, but I think telling someone not to mention a possible suspect, even though you've already spoken to the police about them, is counterproductive. We heard John talk about his jealousy. Heather Hapney called me and told me about an incident that happened shortly before Katelyn went missing, where she was at John's house and he was upset because Katelyn went out to dinner with a couple of friends, one of which was a guy. In this clip, you will hear the end of me explaining what Heather told me and John explaining what happened.
I said, okay. But he came into town, and him and Katelyn went to dinner with each other, and John was at his house, and I was there. Heather said she was there, and John was upset about it, her going out.
Are you sure that wasn't Ashley?
No.
I only remember one instance.
It was Heather.
Okay, but I remember one instance where I did get a little more jealous than I feel like I should have.
Okay.
And this was way before any of this. It was her friend Cly, and I believe Ashley Griggs.
Cly.
Kyle. His name was Kyle, but people called him Cly. She worked with him at Panera. And Cly, like, they weren't friends after that. Like, they were hanging out regularly after all of that shit. But she went out with him.
What's his last name?
And Ashley. I can't remember. She went out with him and Ashley. And I just remember getting a little jealous about it, and I was texting her a bit too much.
Okay.
And when it was all over, she came to me and she's like, John, you can't get that jealous. Like, you have to trust me. And I was like, all right, you're right. And after that, I understood. I got it. And that was our trial for that one. You know, that's what we had to go through for me to go, okay, maybe I can step back a bit and just trust her. Okay. And we never really had an issue like that since.
So when did this happen? When was this dinner thing?
I don't remember.
Was it like within a month of it?
I really don't remember,
It was
Mom.
a couple months prior.
Yeah, I really don't remember exactly when that happened. I don't remember when this Heather situation happened, but I'm sure in that instance, I probably said, hey, Heather, will you go? Just to kind of be my wingman on this one, because I get a little jealous. I'm not angry jealous. I'm not super like, oh, you're going to cheat on me immediately, and it drives me crazy. But I did, like, I just wanted to know, you know, and I try to bed those feelings down, and I try to handle it as much like a gentleman as I can.
I spoke to Cly, but he didn't remember very much about that dinner. So I find something by listening to the 911 call that contradicted my first interview with John.
Sorry, I'm not worried about it.
In the 911 call, John asked if he and Katelyn had an argument. He said no, not at all. During the Jay Ryan interview, he explained while Katelyn did not show him the pics her boss took of her, he said, I know she wanted me to see the pics, but I guess she didn't because we were mad at each other and then stopped at each. We were mad at each, and then, or she was upset because I said I was bored, which you
explained.
Right.
That.
Of course, that slip from John was in our first interview. And of course, I had been holding that under wraps with him since then. Nancy Grace interviewed John Carter twice. The first time was on August 25th, 2011, and then he made another appearance on August 31st, 2011. What stands out to me on the first interview is when John was asked, when did you see her last? John answered, I had left her house because she said she was tired. She had to go to work, and I was, that's how it's always been. End quote. When I questioned him on what he told me, if you remember, he said he got bored and left, versus Grace's that she got tired and wanted to go to bed and she had to work the next day.
John said in a local news interview and on Nancy Grace that Katelyn was about to go to bed and that was why he left. During Jay Ryan interview, he said he got bored.
I'm not going to say publicly to anyone that I was in a fight with her in any way. I'm going to tell you because you're interviewing me and you're looking for answers.
Right.
The only reason I was doing any sort of interviews, local news, Nancy Grace, any of that stuff, I didn't want to do any of that. Okay. The only reason I did it was to make people aware of Katelyn, and I did not want people to start making discrepancies about me when this isn't about me. It's about finding Katelyn. And at that time, we were all working to find Katelyn.
I gotcha.
Wow. Again, he over-explains and gives me something I wanted to know that he has been avoiding answering, truthfully at least. Was there a fight or argument? Claiming there was no fight. Katelyn was just upset because he said he got bored and wanted to leave. That's not a fight. He specifically said we were in a fight. Or I was in a fight with her. So the answer was no up until this point in the investigation. I already stepped into the breakdown, so let me move on. Yes, I will come back to this, and I know what you're thinking about the later comment he made. Just be patient, and we will get into it, I promise. The August 31st interview, John was asked what time he left Katelyn's. That goes hand in hand with when was the last time you saw her. And he says 11:30 to 12. When John asked what time the last picture message came through, he said he couldn't remember. Then he said 12:45, 12:50. John was also asked by Grace if he would take a polygraph. He said yes. Wow, where was I in 2011? If he's giving away polygraphs, I wish I could have been there to give him one, or have Brad Kelly give him one. John does mention the goodnight text to Nancy. John said he got to bed at 4 a.m. and got up at 4:30 p.m. And again, that's what he's telling Nancy Grace. This clip is very interesting. I'm not going to say much about this because I don't want to ruin the breakdown, but I will say this. It has to do with time. That's your hint. It has to do with time. And Karen says it. John reacts. I confirm Karen was right, and John gets a little testy.
When John arrived at Katelyn's house on 8/14/2011, Sunday, and saw her car, wait, did we already go over this?
Yeah, because I stopped you in the middle of the video and explained that to you. Exactly. And again, I don't know a lot of those finer details, and honestly, the more we go over all of this, like, the more honestly I'm basing it off of what I've said before. Right. You know what I mean? Because I'm just trying to be alive at this point. And, I'm trying to make my life, you know, and it's, these are all things that I'm just trying to put together myself.
I got you.
State of shock, state of misunderstandings, all of these misunderstandings.
Right.
These are all things that I'm trying to put together myself. I'm trying to understand the series of events that happened and things like that, and timing, things like that. When I made calls, when I didn't make calls, when these things were happening, all of that stuff is,
it is relevant to some.
I understand. I understand that it is relevant, but I just don't know factually if I can help with a lot.
Now we went over this.
No, I want to go over that one.
Okay, on the police interview.
Okay, so when John arrived at Katelyn's house saw her.
Let me read it because okay. When John arrived at Katelyn's house on Sunday, saw her car, said, "Oh my God, her car is still here. It shouldn't be here. Why the fuck is her car still here? Dude, Matt, I gotta go. I gotta figure out what's going on."
Okay.
Why the panic is basically my question. Okay,
so I remember John calling me and being all upset, and I said, "Calm down," and then he said, "Don't calm down," all that. And he said, I'm afraid something's happened, Katelyn. Will you go to her work? So from what he explained to me and what I remember is that he was upset her car was there. If her car wasn't working, did someone pick her up at work? Is she sitting at work waiting for him? But if she's sitting at work, why didn't she call him? And so he was just kind of processing all.
And that's really what it is like, why?
But
just why? It's not even necessarily that it was panic. It was mostly concern. It was like, what's happening? Right. Why? Because we've had such a... Hold on, Mother.
I'm not finished.
We've had such a routine. We've had such a way of dealing with our day-to-day life. And when that got upset, it's like, why is this being upset? Why is this different? Why are things being out of place?
Right.
And that's where it boils down to.
So I'm going to finish and say,
go for it.
At one point I called him back. And I said, wait a minute, what time is Katelyn getting off work? And he said, 6 o'clock. I said, well, if she was getting a ride home from work.
It should be 7.
I swear you said 6.
Whatever.
Well,
but what I said to her, no matter, let me finish that, this thought. What I said to him was, I know exactly that I said, if she was getting off work at X time, she's not there anymore. She got a ride home. She went somewhere else. I'm wasting my time driving up there. How about if I go to the festival? Because maybe she just walked up to the festival with some friends. So I know that when I called him back, she should have already been home from work.
Right.
And I know his panic came from the fact that I've been texting her all day and she's not responded.
Right.
So why isn't she responding back?
Right.
She would have found a way.
I talked to an employee and she said that it's 6 o'clock they close at 6 on Sundays.
Right.
But they have to shut down. They have to like clean up everything before they leave and stuff like that.
They said they're not out of there like between 6:15 and 6:30. So, any more on that one?
So,
Any more that you have questions on that?
I think you answered that one.
Good. Thank you.
so, and to clarify too, when Johnny said something about her working till 7, I'm doing a translation of how I know John. Her working to 7 is kind of an idea of she wouldn't be home. She would be home at 7.
Right.
Not that her work schedule went till 7.
When someone goes missing and is found deceased, and the person or persons responsible are still at large, what does a family member or friend, whether boyfriend or fiance or just a normal friend, how do they respond to outside help? Well, David Markham has expressed his thanks and gratitude many times over. Most of Katelyn's friends have expressed their thanks and are willing to help anytime I need it. What is the response from the person who was going to marry her? John and I were talking about me coming up and doing the investigation up in Ohio, and he kind of caught me off guard with this.
And especially at first, when you first came in, it's like, why are you here?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're from Florida.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and now that you're not working for whoever that my mom told me about, now that you're not working for that guy, I don't really care about any of that.
Yeah.
I really don't.
Yeah.
But now that you're not doing that, again, why are you here? And I'm not upset about it. I'm not worried about it. And I know that you've had a lot of questions, and I want to know, are there any other questions?
Is this the way someone who lost the love of their life, as John claims, acts towards someone who is a professional and trying to help find out what happened to that love of your life? I was hired and paid to investigate this case, but at the time of this interview, I had been financing my investigation for over 10 months, and I paid for this trip to Ohio. I took this comment by John to mean, I really don't want you here, even though I'm playing nice, because you're the only one my mom and I trust, or mainly my mom. Karen was not in the room when John asked why I was there. She had gone to the restroom. I asked John if his car was processed. I also asked if he would take a polygraph. Let's listen to John and Karen's response when I asked John to take a polygraph. There is a statistic I share with John in this clip. His response was delayed, but it was very interesting that he thought it important to bring it back up and counter that number for that statistic.
One of my questions is, did they actually go into your car and did they process your vehicle?
Yes.
They did?
Yes.
Did they take it with them, or did they do it at your
They
house?
took it.
They took
it, but it was days later.
Okay.
But it was still a mess.
Okay.
It's always a mess.
Okay. And of course, nothing showed. All right. Listen, John. I'm going to give you a statistic, and I'm going to ask you a question. You're going to understand why I'm asking you this question.
Okay.
Which is statistic. Okay. Do I want to make sure 100% you're telling me the truth? Yeah, I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to give you this statistic. 95% of white females that are murdered by their current, their ex-boyfriend or husband.
Okay.
That's straight from the FBI.
I understand that.
Okay. So this is where everybody is saying.
I have a question.
Sure.
About that statistic.
Sure.
Is that 95% of solved cases?
Yes.
And so that does not include unsolved cases.
That's correct. But
So when it's 95%, and I'm not trying to argue.
They were unsolved.
Okay, but even at 95% of solved cases, the unsolved cases are not explained because it's not that easy.
Right. This is not an easy case.
That's my point.
This is not an easy case at all.
That's my point.
But I want to offer something to you that will make me feel better. Sure will make you feel better. Your mom feel better. I want to offer the same thing I offered to your mom. I want to offer you the chance to take a polygraph.
It won't make me feel better.
It will make me feel better.
Hang on just one second. Let me finish. with an independent guy who's not a police officer. I want to make the same deal. I don't think you heard the deal I made your mom. I'll give you 4 questions, okay? Mm-hmm. Answer the 4 questions. If you pass, I'll go on a camera and say you passed. Mm-hmm. I'll say you passed the independent polygraph, and he has 20 years of experience. So leave the guy alone. If you fail, that'll be between me and you. I won't say a damn word to anybody. Mm-hmm. Will you accept that?
I really don't want to do a polygraph. It's been 5 years. Mm-hmm. I've been through the ringer and back. I've done many polygraphs. I've done many interrogations, and even still today, they're trying to do this. Regardless of whether or not you say 100% certainty that you don't think you did it, it's not going to stop anyone else. It's not going to stop the accusations. It's not going to stop anything.
But it will help a lot.
It could, but it's still, to me, I know I didn't do it. And if you're doing if you're doing this right, you'll find the person who did it, and that will prove it. Mm-hmm. Not me being on a polygraph does not prove anything. It just lets you know some shadow of an idea, but it's not going to give you the answer. The answer comes with catching the person who actually did this.
Right.
And so I'm not going to do a polygraph. I will not do a polygraph, and I don't mean any disrespect to you or to the way that you do investigations, but at this point, I'm not even going to talk to the police without a lawyer anymore. Okay. I'm here under good faith and under the desire.
I understand. Let me, and that's your choice. All right, I respect that. I'm not going to ask you again. Okay. But I do want to say this. I want to ask you a question because I'd like to know.
Okay.
Because they might have told me something different than they told you. I don't know. Mm-hmm. What did they tell you about the voice analysis that you took at FPD, about the polygraph you took with, I think, Indiana? Mm-hmm. I think you took another polygraph with the FBI, was it? What did they say? Did they say you passed? Did they say you failed? What did they say?
They said inconclusive for like one of them. They said I passed and it was fine.
Which one was that?
I think one of the voice stress analysis. I did 2 voice stress analysis. Okay. Some of them they said it was inconclusive. Some of them they just asked me questions. They didn't give me any answers. Okay. And it just honestly just none of it felt like it was getting anywhere.
So they didn't give you a straight answer. You passed, you failed, or anything like that.
Not really. No.
And they told him, you showed inconclusive when we asked you, where would we find her? Would we find her in water? Would we find her in a field? Would we find her da-da-da-da? And they said, and you showed deception on finding her in a field.
She wasn't in a field.
She wasn't in a field.
Exactly.
So what was the point of saying, you showed that there was some kind of concern?
They've done different tactics. They've done full force tactic. They've done, nice guy tactic. They've done it all. Yeah. And honestly, So
passing or failing, passing only means, I know for a fact that if you pass a lie detector test, completely pass it, we can't rule out that you're not a sociopath. Because sociopaths can pass them. Period. End of subject.
I would know.
I understand that. I understand what you're saying. Mm-hmm. And we already know John's not a sociopath. Mm-hmm. That's very clear. But how many sociopaths have passed lie detector tests?
Right.
On top of that, if he passes it and you support him, and please, you're one of the only people I talk to. If you support him, you have a bunch of people who are running around saying that you've gotten on our side, that you're not listening, that, those kind of things. That, to me, all it would do is more people would say, you have teamed up with us, rather than really searching for the truth, which I believe that's what you're doing.
Right.
I believe that's what you're doing, and you're not walking in with preconceived notions.
If I see something, and I'm asked about something that is suspicious to me,
you pick up the phone and call.
I'm going to say, this is suspicious to me. Mm-hmm. Okay?
It's, to me, you're selling me the idea of using or of doing the polygraph as a sense of peace of mind, not only for you, but for myself.
Right.
And I don't see it that way.
Okay.
I don't see it that way at all.
Okay.
And I know that because I have experience with the polygraph, and it's never given me peace of mind.
Okay.
And I just don't think it will.
Okay.
And it's always used against him. Always.
Yeah. Well, they're a tool, and
But again, what our experience is like when Indiana came in. All they did was just keep berating him, saying, to where this kid was like spinning in circles. It's like, what the hell is going on? Do you want to know if I'm lying or not? That's one thing. But then you sit there and start screaming at me and yelling at me. Of course it's going to change the effect of things.
Right.
And it just... Again, like I said, there is not anything that I have read or seen or anything. The other thing is if he passes it this time, Facebook's going to say, well, he practiced a lot. And no, but that's what they're going to say.
Yeah.
It's not, and it's
not going to give anyone.
Yeah, it's not going to give anyone a peace of mind except for maybe me and maybe you.
Yeah. It would.
I'm sure, but
I don't know.
But you're on a case. You have things to work with, and I'm here answering these questions 5 years later, trying to go back to that day.
I understand.
And trying to give you this, and I'm trying to give you everything I can, but I cannot give you a polygraph.
Okay. All right. That's enough said. Do you have anything you want to add?
Do you have any more questions?
Not right now.
Okay.
Can I leave that on the table?
I mean, to an extent.
Hey, John, I got a question for you. Let me run up to Ohio. I mean, just like maybe text him.
That's fine. That's how you've been doing it, and that's fine. But you got to understand, at a certain point, I want my life. Okay? And I need it. I'm working my best to give you everything you need and maintain my life and my composure.
I gotcha.
Because we're 5 years later, man. We're 5 years later. And nobody, all of these agencies, all of these people, I've been on top of this for 5 years. And they're still coming to me as if I have the answer.
Right.
I don't. And I'm sorry, but that's all I can give you. I have no answers. I have nothing that's going to lead you in that path. The only thing I can do is tell you what I know about what I did. Okay. And people are going to come at you with questions about things that I was doing, and I'm going to try and answer the questions you have about that. But that's all I got.
I gotcha.
That's all I got.
I want to point out a couple things. First of all, the reason Katelyn's case isn't easy is because her body was in the elements for 20 months. Physical evidence is hard to come by when all you have to work with is bones. The rain, the snow, the moisture in that area of Indiana, and then you have the heat. So, yeah, it's hard because there's no physical evidence or very little physical evidence where Katelyn was found. And John said the voice stress test he passed, but others were inconclusive. Then he goes on to say, I have experience with the polygraph, and it's never given me peace of mind. That tells me he failed him, or at least deceptive on most of the test questions. I have taken plenty of polygraphs. When I was applying for different law enforcement agencies straight out of the police academy, and I knew I was telling the truth. The machine registered I was telling the truth, and I was hired. So if you're telling the truth, then what do you mean they haven't given you a peace of mind? Katelyn wasn't found in a field, as Karen said, but she was across the street from a huge field. Huge field. So was the question, will she be found in a field, or will she be near a field, or I think you get what I'm saying. There was a Facebook member on Katelyn's page that actually said, I was working for John's family to distribute misinformation on John's behalf. It was really ridiculous. I don't believe this member thinks this anymore, but that's what Karen was alluding to when she was mentioning, people are going to say that, you've teamed up with us now. So that's what she was talking about. John said, I want my life and I need it. We are 5 years later, man. All these agencies, all these people have been on this for 5 years and they still are coming to me as if I have the answers, and I don't. When case information comes back to the same person over and over, there is something to be said for that. As you can tell, John got a little heated, and it has been 5 years, but you love Katelyn and you truly want justice. Wouldn't you do what you have to do to achieve that? I know I would. Telling John what I have in the back of my mind, as far as what this investigation has led me to believe about him, is very important.
There's going to be a little piece in the back of my mind that did John do this. And I'm being upfront and honest with you. Because
Ryan, you could have told me you could have told me an opposing idea. You could have said, I would never think you would do this in a million years, and no matter what you said, I would think that exists in the back of your mind regardless.
Right. But I can tell you right now, you're not the only one there. I want to rule you out, but I can't.
And you feel that the polygraph for you would rule all that out?
I feel that it would help.
And I respect that. I really respect that. And I understand your side of the table. I really do.
Here is even more evidence that John failed the polygraphs.
But sitting on this side of the table and going through it each time, and each time, I'm the one saying to him, go back and do the polygraph. Go back. It will show. It will be right this time. And it's not. And then, it hits all over the place. Chaos of things that are supposedly said and done,
Did you hear what he said? It doesn't matter if I'm telling the truth or not. John, if you were telling the truth, you would pass those polygraphs. Let's listen to the end of this interview, and John corrects the statistic in the clip. Listen to the last thing he says. A very deep look into the mind of John Carter.
It took him 5 years to come to the point of saying, I'm done. I'm done. I have the right to be done with answering those questions. But with you, he's still coming back. He will come back every time.
I understand, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I promise that, unless it's something big, I won't call you back. Or if I can ask this over the phone or whatever, but I wanted, you to see what I was talking about. To quite frankly, when I explained it to some people, they didn't quite get it. And unless you're looking at it and you know what I'm talking about, it's hard to understand.
Yeah.
So I didn't want
face-to-face is important.
Yeah.
It's very important. It's important for us too.
Yeah, I wanted you to understand what I was talking about. So you're not like, I don't know what this guy says, and just give me an answer. That don't ever just give anybody an answer. Make sure you understand.
Absolutely.
So
I'm here talking to you, and I will do what I can to help you.
Okay.
I've always had the notion that you've had it in the back of your mind. I have it in the notion that everyone who talks to me has that in the back of their mind.
Right.
What if?
Right.
What if he did? And honestly, I've been living with that since this started.
Right.
This has been a part of it. It's been everything I'm doing. And I've told everyone I know, even people I've met after the fact, I've told them all. And I assume they all have that little bit in the back of their mind that questions it.
But it's there. You understand?
And it's a part of it.
I hear you.
Everything that I've gone through, everything I've done is a part of this.
Right.
It's something that I knew would happen. I knew that statistic, which I heard 80%. But either way, I've heard that statistic before. I've heard a lot of things before.
Could have been. But
I've heard a lot of these. I've heard a lot of these things before, and I've heard all about it. I know.
But it doesn't change what you didn't do.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't change what I know, and I know that I loved her with all my heart, and that I would never hurt her, and I know that if it was an accident, I would have crumbled.
Right.
I would have talked to everyone about it.
Right.
And I would currently be sitting in jail.
I know that if it was an accident, I would have crumbled and talked to everybody about it and would be currently sitting in jail. Who goes to jail for an accident unless you're doing something illegal to cause the accident to occur, like a drunk driver or someone who gives someone else drugs and they overdose and die, or a fight where someone dies due to a blow or getting knocked down and hitting their head on the ground or something hard. Basically a manslaughter situation. But in a legitimate accident, no one goes to jail. Why would John say that? That's very interesting. Why would he say that? Why, if she fell down the stairs and busted her head open, he's not going to jail unless he threw her down the stairs. Okay, you understand what I'm saying? So if it was an accident, you're not going to jail. Now, if you caused it to be an accident because of something you gave her or something you were taking and you did, that's another story. But it's very interesting to hear John say that. Thanks for listening to Gone at 21. I will be back next week with the last episode of the investigation. I added an episode before the breakdown begins. You will be hearing interviews from those who went to school with Katelyn and some questions that I needed answered. Remember, the first episode of the breakdown will begin in 2 weeks and will be titled, What Police? The police investigation into Katelyn's death is just as important as the witnesses we already heard from. It's a part of the story, and I'm going to tell it. If you like this podcast, please think about sponsoring us. You can go to patreon.com/GoneAt21, or you can find us on the GoFundMe website. Please like and subscribe. If you're listening on iTunes, please rate and review. Until next time, I'm Jay Ryan. Take care.